Most business owners would say starting a business is always the most difficult thing that you can do. More so than that, they say starting a restaurant is definitely the most difficult business to start.
Don't overcomplicate things. It's more simple, but you make it.
You're just getting started, but I feel like you carry with you a lot of story.
U.S. military came in and saved my life. This is why I wanted to move to this country.
In today's second episode of the 5 to 9 podcast, we talked to Prince Blakaj. Prince is the owner and operator of the restaurant Mare in Monte, an Italian restaurant located in San Antonio. Even though this is a brand new restaurant to the city, it's now ranked among the top restaurants locally. It's been featured in Ken 5 News, Express San Antonio News, as well as My San Antonio magazine. Prince has a phenomenal story. So far, Mare Monte has collected over 500 perfect scores in Google reviews, really proving that this is a well-established restaurant with a very strong brand and story that carry the experiences of their customers and the quality of their food. I had the personal experience of visiting the restaurant and I was completely blown away. So I had so many questions for Prince. How is that his restaurant is that good? And how is he standing out from the competition? And just like last episode, we'll end today's interview with more branding. I hope you enjoyed this episode. With that being said, let's get into the podcast. All right. Thank you, Prince, for being here. Second episode of the 5 to 9 podcast. Appreciate you being here so much. We got the pleasure to go into your restaurant last weekend, and it was amazing. I think it was something that I had not experienced before in terms of an Italian restaurant. And I've been to maybe 5 or 6 here in San Antonio, which wasn't a bad experience going to these restaurants to begin with. But what was a surprise to me is that I threw off my expectations of any restaurants when I went in, just because of the customer service, the ambience, the decoration of the restaurant, you introducing yourself to me, and also, of course, the food. The food was so good. So thank you so much for being here again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me here, man. I'm so excited to be in here. Like when we talked about this and you invited me in, I was like, yes, I want to do this. I like this guy. I like his personality. So I'm so excited to be here. I'm more than honored to be here. So thank you so much for having me in here.
Thank you, Prince. Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to start this podcast by asking a little bit about your background. And I like to put a little context in here. You own and run an Italian restaurant, right?
Yes.
Okay. Where are you from?
I own Mare Monte Italian restaurant that's located in Hubner Road in Medical Center, very close to Floyd Curl. I'm from Kosovo. I'm Albanian from Kosovo. So I grew up there. I lived there for 25 years, and then I moved 6 years ago in America.
Amazing. That's so cool. So the reason I asked where you were coming from is because you're Albanian, but your affiliation or your passion here is with Italian food. So that's something I wanted to know. What got you into Italian cuisine in this case?
Yeah. When I came to America 6 years ago, I didn't know anything about food. Like literally, I know how to cook 2 eggs, probably. That's it. And used to be a doctor of physical therapy back in Albania. When I came to America, they didn't accept me as a doctor of physical therapy. They only accepted me as a physical therapist assistant. Okay. Since that, like I started to work in an Italian restaurant. The restaurant is Patricia's at Morris Park in the Bronx over there in New York. And I just fell in love with that. I fell in love with the action. I fell in love with the food we was making. I fell in love with everything what was behind. But probably I'm crazy, but it's part of it.
Most business owners would say starting a business is always the most difficult thing that you can do. But more so than that, they say starting a restaurant is definitely the most difficult business to start. I'm curious, before we get into that, you mentioned you immigrated first into New York. Could you tell us a little bit about where your migration story is into the United States? I'm also an immigrant into the United States. Could you share a little bit more about your background? How do you go from Albania to the United States?
Sure. My dream was to live in the United States. I always wanted, since I was young, since I was 6 years old, 5 years old, I always loved America. My uncles, they immigrated in America in the 2000s and ones. And then they would send us pictures. They would we would see them. We grew up watching American movies, like watching the movies with RVs that people used to travel all over America, like, and that comedy movies, if you remember all of them. So we grew up with America around us, especially coming from a place from Kosovo where we love America. We celebrate 4th of July. It's just incredible. Like, you just have a desire to move to America. I got the chance in 2018 with my wife, and we moved to New York. Like, we moved to New York because New York is the biggest Albanian community in America. And we wanted, like, in the same time to move here, but in the same time to be close to our people. You need that kind of Albanianness in your life.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up over there. But then it started, like, America treated us good, like treated us good from the beginning, like we found jobs. My wife, she's a hairdresser. I used to work in restaurants, started to bus tables in Patricia's, and then started to learn. Then I started to read books about food. I started to do all that. And here we are, living our American dream 6 years after.
That's great. That's such a good story. When I immigrated into the United States, my parents had a ton of missions for me. The first one was to be here to begin with, because just like you, my parents also had high respect for the United States. And American culture in South America was very prevalent when I was in high school. So, you'd watch the movies and it's all American movies. You watch any type of shows, it's all American shows. Yeah. And so I had this sort of expectation moving into the United States of, okay, I'm going to move here. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get married. And it's just a bunch of steps I had to take to get there. Did you have a plan coming in to when you first got here?
Not really, man. Like, we went to New York. What's fun? New York is fun. It's beautiful. But still, like, you don't experience the real America in New York. Yeah. Like, and that was a shock for us, that it was like, hey, what? This is America? New York is, everybody's rude, everybody. You don't have that, like that lady waving at you and your next door neighbor. You know what I mean? Like, it's just different. But we started traveling. Me and my wife have been to every state in America. Literally every single one of them. So that's when we understood America. That's when we saw the patriotism of Americans. That's when we saw the kindness of Americans. That's when we saw that there are so many cultures still blended together in a pot that is just incredible, just delicious.
That was also my experience, by the way. I moved to Florida originally, and it's a very cosmopolitan state. There's people moving from Cuba, moving from
Venezuela.
Yeah, Venezuela, people from China, from Japan. And so it was like this melting pot of different cultures, backgrounds. My friends were international students. They were, born Americans as well. It's just all kinds of backgrounds. So it was very interesting. When I grew up in Chile, I had a bit of a rough childhood when it came to that, because my parents and I had immigrated from Bolivia into Chile, which had been in recent conflict like less than 100 years ago. Yes. So we did experience some racism, things like it. And so when I thought, okay, I'm going to move into a city or a state where there's just so much more diversity, I thought I would face maybe a little bit more of that. I don't know. Yeah. But it was completely the opposite. I've always felt welcome. And I was very interested to just travel through all the states, which I have yet to do. Yeah. I've been through several of them, but I have not yet finished that. Okay. Would you tell me a little bit more now about your restaurant? I want to know what originated the idea of opening an Italian restaurant. I know your experience was with Italian food, but did you ever have maybe an inclination to say, okay, I'm also familiar with Albanian food. Maybe I want to share that.
Yeah, for sure. Italian food is my favorite food, man. Like, I just like to eat that kind of food. Like, for me, if I make something at home, I'm gonna do something with pasta. You know what I mean? Like, and all these dishes that we have in here, me and my wife was making them home. Like, our restaurant is home cooking. Don't forget that. Like, like every dish in there, like when we sit it, me and my wife and the chef, what's my cousin, shout out to Lorik. When we sit it together to build the menu, we asked ourselves, what's our favorite things to eat? And then we just build it. Like, we didn't know if that sells. We didn't know if that goes. We didn't know if people like that. like no idea
Yeah.
because never owned a restaurant, never managed one. I only used to serve tables, so
Yeah.
it's just that simple. So the connection with the Italian food, it's a beautiful cuisine and it touches a lot of variety around around the Mediterranean over there. Like we all have pasta now. We all use the same ingredients now. We have the same climate. So it's a lot of influence from the Italians and the Greeks all over the place, and that's why I felt good with Italian food. Albanian food is not very much different from Italian food because it's the same ingredients. It's
Yeah.
the same climate, especially with southern Italian food. Do have some different things that we got from the Ottoman Empire, the influence we got from Ottoman Empire. I'm not the biggest fan of them, so I just didn't do it because I don't like them.
I gotcha. Perfect. All right. So this gives me a good idea or a background of why open a restaurant, how you got into the United States, how you landed where we are. Could you tell me, I've always been curious of opening, not necessarily a restaurant. I think in the future, I'd love to open a coffee shop.
Love that.
But I'm thinking of all the steps I need to take to do that, because you need to think of real estate, hiring people, you need to do accounting and taxes, billing. Would you be able to share maybe for new restaurant owners, maybe aspiring restaurant owners, what was that experience for you of finding a good spot to open a restaurant or hiring
My story is a
people?
little bit different. I went a non-conventional way. I moved to Texas in last October. I was looking for places all over San Antonio. Nobody would give me a lease because I never owned a restaurant, never managed one, so they didn't trust me. A guy that owned this place before me, he just opened up 2 weeks before I got it. I bought the business from him. I bought his lease.
Wow.
And I didn't have any month free. I didn't have any money to put in there. Like like the developer didn't give me any money to put in there or anything like this. I went in there with the money I saved for the last 6 years, waiting tables, and my wife cutting hair and doing makeup and doing all that to be building
Wow.
it. We went together in there and we thought hey, listen, let's go. Let's do it. Let's do it. It's dedication. It's hard work. I have a Colombian friend. His name is Julian. He helped me out painting everything. He built out the moon. He did a lot of work and he just helped me out. All these places, all these things that we did in there, because don't forget it used to be a fried chicken place before we got it. And we built everything. We updated the kitchen. We updated everything in the restaurant with our own money. Nobody backing us up. Nobody. And yeah, but it's a dream. It's just a dream. You just want to live a dream. You just try to do your best, and it's been working out so far.
That's great. Wow. I was not aware they would ask you of having manager or restaurant management experience for you to lease a restaurant. It's kind of like catch-22 where a lot of people will post these sort of entry-level jobs listings for employment applications, and then they ask for 2 or 3 years of experience. So that's kind of interesting.
First question they would ask me is do you own another one?
That's ridiculous. That's so interesting.
But now, it's been 4 months already, and now everybody comes with proposals hey, you want my space, you want my space, how much things change in 4 months. Literally 4 months ago, I was begging people for places.
Interesting.
I got to medical center, I didn't know anything about medical center. I didn't know anything about the location. It was the only location I could go in.
I see. And I have to say, it's a good location.
Yeah.
Got lucky there, man. That's awesome. All right. So that's sort of how do you acquire the real estate? How is that you go about opening a restaurant? Is there anything in particular you need to do in terms of incorporating your business? Do you do kind of like an LLC?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
you have to open an LLC. You have to file for permits, health permits, all that. It's part of that. But there are people that do that. You don't have to be knowledgeable about that. There are people that only do that. And I have a thing about me that the things I don't do best, I don't do it myself. It's just that easy. If I don't do I'm not good at baking. I don't bake my own bread. I have a pastry chef in home that does my desserts. Like, like if I'm not good at that, like I just don't go for it. Like,
Yeah.
or I become good. It takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's much better to just hire an accountant who's great at their job.
Hire in-house CPA, hire people that gonna work around you. Like hire that floor manager, hire that chef, hire that kitchen manager. Have everybody, because you're investing in your own place, and this is how I see it. Like it's an investment if we hire somebody.
100%. Could you tell me about that a little bit? How you find good employees?
That's the hard part, but I've been lucky so far. Like just a week ago, since we made top 10 Italian San Antonio restaurants from San Antonio Express News, we went to number 6. In 3 months, going number 6, competing with restaurants that been in the business for 20, 25 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Like in the beginning, I was like, hey, 6, I'm number 1. But still, like, like I was like, hey, you are 3 months in here. You have to prove yourself.
Yeah.
And since that, I got 2 new ladies, like chefs. One of them is from Baja California. Another one is from Chihuahua. And we got them here. They used to work in Wyoming, in Jackson, Wyoming, and we got them here to help us improve and get to number 1 next year. So you just scout for talent. You just need talent. It's not easy to find them, but we try a lot of people every day. Every day we have interviews. Every day we call people in. Every day we post in Indeed. Every day I tell people, hey, if you guys have guys, send them to me.
I see. Is there like a profile for an employee you're looking for?
Just to have a good attitude.
Good attitude.
That's it.
That's so refreshing to hear. So in my experience, at least when I've done interviews in the past, myself and with other people, I for some reason, I'm always given a checklist. It's sort of like, you need to have these many years of experience here, have familiarity with this type of technology, or doing this or doing that, which I recognize could be important, if you're a doctor or something like that. But generally speaking, the best time I've had working with any team has always been people who are willing to work with me, and people who are, easy to work with, people who they're really motivated. They have a shared mission with each other, and they'll learn. I learned.
I did.
Yeah. That's so great to hear. And I feel like it's something missing maybe in other restaurants, because I've seen some other restaurants that, the service wouldn't be so good, but maybe they've had their team doesn't change that much. They're not very aware of that.
The idea is like they made restaurant business very complicated, and I didn't understand why. Because in the end, like you serving glass of water, glass of wine, bread, oil, and you taking an order. You mess up the order. Yes, you do. You change it. Just don't kill anybody. Just make sure that we don't mess up with allergies and stuff like this. Everything else, like, I don't mind my server making a mistake. I mind if they make a mistake and they don't tell me about it, so we can fix it.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? Like, I don't mind them making a mistake. Nobody yells at them. Nobody tells them anything. Like, I don't want to block that message.
Yeah.
If I yell at them, if I tell them, hey, what you did, what's going on, like, next time I'm going to block that message. I don't want to block the message that I have between me and the customer, and it goes through the server. Mm-hmm. So if I kill the server, like if I stop the server from giving me the message, that's the biggest mistake I do in the restaurant industry. And a lot of people do it.
Yeah, I did notice that when I visited your restaurant. The other thing so we had something happen at your restaurant that I don't think it was bad or nothing. It just speaks of just how successful you've been so far. You were really busy that day. And so there was a bit of a delay on our food. Yeah. I had no problem with it. The reason why is because service was there saying like, I'm sorry for the wait. It's okay. It's going to come soon. I think you guys brought in a little more bread. Yes. They offered us wine. Yes. So there's something that was there in terms of you really caring about what the customer thinks and being aware of where they are, what they're doing. Something that really blew me away, honestly, because in similar experience I've had in other restaurants, I just had to wait. Yeah. There was no one that was there to check on me. Not only did the service check on me, you checked on me.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
We are fresh restaurant. Like we're figuring things out. We're learning while we go. Like
Yeah.
like lately we've been starting to get very very busy. And don't forget, I got the
Yeah.
chicken fried place and made them nice restaurant. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like this transition with the kitchen and everything isn't the hardest one,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it gets so busy. Especially when it gets so busy,
Yeah.
ticket times go up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's food that is made from scratch. We have to take our time with everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put anything bad outside, and it's very important for me nobody to leave hungry from that place.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to do this, like you have to do the best possible. That's why we hired more people on the team. We building a better system. So things like that last night, they're gonna happen, but not to let them happen a lot.
Yes, I see that. Something I had mentioned to you, this might be the third time I bring it up, but I thought it was so remarkable. Maybe we can get into brand here a little bit. When I go into a restaurant every weekend, basically just going on out a date or dinner or whatever it may be, I have this sort of checklist. I go and I say, was the food good to begin with? Was there plenty of food? And then was it a good value? Was it a good price? I can't really put it in words what it was exactly that happened during that time. It was just my impression. But when I visited your restaurant, that sort of checklist or whatever I had just went out the window. I didn't care.
I love that.
It was just such a good experience.
Thank you. I think you have to surprise people. You wasn't expecting everybody to be friendly. You wasn't expecting the food to be like that because everything we have over there is different. Like the way we wait tables, the way we greet everybody, the way we open the door for everybody, the way we greet everybody coming in and we greet everybody going out. The food we have is just different food. It's just different Italian. Like, like when I opened up the restaurant, I went to every Italian restaurant in San Antonio and just made everything different. Like before I opened up the restaurant, like I just ate in every other restaurant and just make everything differently. And I tell people like, hey, if you came to a restaurant that you're craving something specific that you don't have in the menu, let us know because we can make you the spaghetti meatball. We can make you a spaghetti bolognese. We can make you a pappardelle or whatever you crave that you get in other restaurants. But still, like, this is what we have here. And try them out because it's thoughtful food.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm starting to recall a little bit of my first impressions. When you first walk into your restaurant, there's this aisle of books, of cookbooks. And a lot of them I recognized was Matthew Matheson's book that was there. You had the San Antonio Foods cookbook that was in there as well. So I not only I feel like you just put like whatever book was in there, I think you put something that was relevant, something that people maybe would recognize and say, okay, I recognize San Antonio and of course Matthew Matheson. And
those books are things that the menu is built from those books. Like,
exactly.
Like it's just my personal collection. I have tons of books, political books, marketing books, that and that. But that's my cooking collection over there. That's how I learned to cook. That's magazines that I tried every dish. Like because our menu is built from different things. Not that I know a recipe like right there and I build it up. Like like I know an ingredient right there and I get the ingredient somewhere else, and just build it up and make an amazing dish.
Yeah, I see that, and I can really see your expertise on the dish. Something that also I really appreciated about the restaurant was that I've seen some menus in restaurants that are like 4 or 5 pages long, and I'm not sure what to order, and it seems a little overwhelming. But in yours, it was a very tailored list. I could tell that whatever I was going to get from the menu, you were an expert at. Because
that's all about it. Yes.
Yeah, you refine each dish.
Yes.
It's an incredible attention to detail and to making improvements.
Yes.
Is that something you do often? Kind of every week we're trying to see what we can do better about a dish or not.
Well, yeah, all the time. Like like we did work on the dishes so much, but now now we're making studies on what's going, like what's selling, what people don't like it much, what we have problems with. it's making a dish nice is one part, but executing it, the way of the executant, the way it stores, the way how long it stays on the stores, like all this, it has to be incorporated on the menu. When we built the menu, like for me, in my mind, it's like how I can make it easy for the customer. Like I want to make sure that customer has the easiest possible thing. Like customer, if I could feed them with my hand, I would do it myself. Like I want customers not to do anything beside fork and knife. Like, I don't want them to be confused what they're gonna get. Like I try to explain everything in detail, so even it's gonna be easier for the waiter, it's gonna be easier for the customer. It's everything about make it easy. Like they complicated things with the years and with the years and with the years, and we are on the point that you have some sauce names that you don't understand anything what it is, why you put the name, how you expect a normal person just explain what's the sauce, like it's a lemon butter sauce, but it's a lemon butter sauce. What? It's a meat sauce. It's just a meat sauce. It cannot be anything else beside meat sauce.
Yeah.
Right? No, it's just that. So I want to make things easy. I want to make things not easy, simple.
I see. I wanted to also just highlight my thanks for you to be in the podcast. Is awesome that you taking a shot at putting yourself out there in social media. I don't think a lot of restaurants do that. Is there a reason you think maybe approaching social media would be a good strategy for your restaurants? Would you recommend it for others?
I would recommend it for others for sure. Like, and then this is fun. I'm going to go and talk to my friends about this. I'm going to call my mom back in Albania and tell her that I had a podcast. I'm going to tell my wife. And like, in the end, it's all about my well-being too, but does it help the restaurant? Yes, it does. Does it help to put your story up? Yes, it does. And you saying thank you, but I'm the one that have to thank you just to have me in here and just to have this conversation and for the amazing coffee. And
anytime,
everything. Like, I was so excited to have you in here. I was so excited. I literally, man, I woke up at 6 a.m. in the morning just because I was so excited to be here. So I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you. No, that means a lot to me.
I appreciate you.
Okay. All right. I want to know more a little bit about your brand. I think it's something that's understated in restaurants, but I've noticed also that restaurants that really push it and start opening second, third, fourth location, they have their brand really nailed down. There's a few that come to mind, of course yours, but I'm thinking maybe some chains that originated in San Antonio and they keep on growing. I'm thinking, for example, of La Panaderia, if you're familiar with them.
La Panaderia is one of my favorite places to go.
Yeah, and it's so incredible the way that
salty things, not very sweet things.
Yes. They have their own tortas and dishes that you go in there. Their menu is beautifully crafted.
They started as a food truck or something.
Yes. Their story is amazing.
Yes.
And so I think at one point La Panaderia had to have gone to a point to recognize this is what we're the best at. And this is why people keep coming back. Let's put this together in a great package. And so that's their menu, of course, their restaurant layout, the way that they place their lines. They used to, I think, just to be seated tables and they'll come to you with a menu you order. But now it's kind of like a line and you go through a pastry window.
I went through that myself.
Yeah. And the pastry window is so amazing because I always come in here thinking, okay, I'm going to get a torta, maybe a soup or something.
But you end up getting something else.
I get the pastry because the pastry looks so good when I'm walking out to the register. It's just interesting to me how they've nailed down exactly what is that each restaurant looks like. And now they're into their second or third location. If you go to any of them, the experience is the same.
You always have to wait in line.
It's really interesting. It also causes this sense of like I'm missing out because there's such a long line in here. I need to try whatever it is that they're having.
What's going on? Yes.
Okay.
I understand. I go there quite a while.
Me too.
Quite a lot because I just like to see what they're doing. Like for me, it's like inspirational.
Yeah.
And I think there's some young guys. I don't know them. Like I don't know how they work. I don't know if, like anything, but still, it's pretty amazing.
Could you tell me a little bit about what you're currently trying? Just kind of specifically, for example, how many times maybe you read on your menu or redone the layout of your restaurant? I know you guys are fresh,
Yeah,
but
we're almost 4 months old. So, but we're already working updating the menu.
Mhm.
We're gonna take some things off and we're gonna put some things on. And like we have 5 dishes on, 5 dishes ready, but one with the last dish we're working on. And I think as soon as possible we're gonna be like bringing new items in the menu and taking some of the old ones up, because what's happening, and that's very important for a restaurant especially, is like we've been having so many returning customers that we have people that come in there like 3-4 times a week. And the fact that they come 3-4 times a week, they go through a menu. I have to go to La Panderia eat sometimes because I'm just tired of all that, you know what I mean?
Right.
So even customers gonna come to a point like that, so we're gonna keep refreshing them every time. And with the desserts, we've been playing around all the time. Right now it's cherry season, so we're making a cherry cake.
Yes.
And it's amazing. It's been selling. It's people have been loving it, and we're just gonna have it for 2 more weeks, and it's gonna be gone after that.
What about the restaurant layout? I know we talked about the way how you enter, and there's
The layout, yes. Like since we opened how we opened, like we didn't have a lot of things in the beginning, so we didn't have a lot of money to even invest a lot in the restaurant. Whatever we did ourselves or friends that helped us out. So right now we're waiting for some things to come in, and yeah, we're gonna change a little bit, but not so much for now. Like it needs at least a year to change it. But we still move tables. We still try to figure out the way how tables are best positioned and everything. We still need to fill up the bar. We don't have the wine and beer license yet, so that's a big part. And noise blockers. Noise blockers is the next big investment in there.
Interesting. A couple other example restaurants I've seen in terms of layout, just that I've highlighted. Every time I go to a restaurant, I try to take mental notes. I need to start bringing with me like a notebook or something. I've been to this restaurant called Brasão. I don't know if you've been to it.
Brasa or Brasão?
I think it's Brasão. It's like a Brazilian steakhouse.
Yes. I know Brasão. I was thinking about the Italian restaurant. Yeah.
Oh, okay. The experience I had in that restaurant was interesting because I recognized as soon as I walked in, it was packed. Every single table was full and everything. But they purposefully dimmed down the entire restaurant, and they put these sort of like focus lights like right above them, the table. So when you sit down, you don't feel like overwhelmed with whatever is going on around you. Because not only you have the traffic of the people sitting down, but because they're bringing food to your table, there's like 5 or 6 times the amount of waiters that you would expect. But it never felt overwhelming to me because the interior design of the restaurant was so intentional in making it still feel very, very unique. You still feel like you're on a date or whatever.
Very true.
I got a very similar feeling in your restaurant. Could you tell me what you did in the restaurant to get that feeling?
It's the lights. It's the lights on the tables. Like the lights on the table, like we put like when it gets dark outside, like we put the lights very down, and then you have the lights on the table that feel just your table. You just see your table. You don't see the surroundings. Like it's just your table. That doesn't happen during the day. That doesn't happen like till 7:30, 8 o'clock right now. But that's why we're investing on shades. But it's very hard to get people in to work, like
100%.
We've been waiting for 3 weeks for some shades, stuff like this. But yeah, we're working towards that. We're doing our best possible towards that. But in the end, it is big part how it looks, but it's a 10%, I feel like. At least I feel that. Probably I'm wrong, but it's all about how you make people feel in there and what kind of food you serve, and especially what kind of food you serve. You can have everything in the best way possible. If you don't serve the right food,
it's not good.
It doesn't work. I know beautiful restaurants. I know gorgeous restaurants that I'm jealous when I see their layout, but food is not good.
This is not good. Interesting. Yeah, that 10% definitely. I think maybe when you're competing for that top notch in restaurants,
every 10% is a big thing.
It's a big That's the difference between a B and an A.
Yes.
I see. Very cool. Something else I had in mind. In your restaurant, you're just getting started, but I feel like you carry with you a lot of story. When you moved to Albania, you got into the United States. You're also landing here into a very cosmopolitan city in San Antonio now that you moved from New York. It's maybe a similar feeling, but maybe it's a different mix of people. Not only do you have a large group of Hispanics audience in here, but you also have a lot of military.
Yes.
Do you think there's any cross in there in your story and maybe where we are right now?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I have a very specific relationship or connection, let's say connection with the US military. Like in 1999, in my country, in Kosovo, it was a very big war. People was getting murdered, slaughtered, killed, raped. And US military came in and saved my life. America came in and saved my life. This is why I love this country. This is why I wanted to move to this country. This is why I moved to San Antonio, because it's military city USA. I wanted to be around those people. I want to live with them, to live amongst them, to serve them. Like, I want to serve the people that served, because that's what's all about it. We give a 10% military discount to a restaurant just to make sure that they feel appreciated. We put 1999 over there at the year that happened because I want to make sure that they know how important they are for people like me, how important they are for the world. And you know what's a funny thing? You was talking about Chile, and since we have a very special connection with the military, couple weeks ago we had military from all over the world, including Chile, to come to a restaurant to eat all together. Like, there was military from Kosovo, Albania, from Chile, from Azerbaijan, all over Turkey, all over the world with Americans to eat at a restaurant. That was pretty amazing. Like, that made me very proud.
That is amazing. That's such a great story. I always find it very understated whenever you feel something more than just service coming from a country in this case, but it could be a restaurant, it could be a store. The last guest I had in here was my realtor in this house. And I had a very similar experience as I did with your brand, where I had spoken with multiple realtors before working with him. But I always felt like they were just trying to get my business, get the money, and then get out. And so,
car salesman,
kind of like, car salesmen get a bad rep. I really want to talk with one, by the way, like a good one, and see what's giving them that bad rep. But yeah, at one point I recognized when I talked to Joel, my previous guest, that he was never really trying to sell me anything. He was really just trying to solve my problem, give me kind of that rescue line and where it was. And he didn't did that once. He did that twice. And so I have a high degree of appreciation. And I remember, and I really cherish the times that restaurants like yours and servicemen like our military get to have that sort of impact on people. And it's not easy to do. It takes a lot of courage, I think.
I appreciate you for saying that, man. God bless you, bro.
Yeah, anytime. Okay. I'd like to know maybe more specifically is, could you tell me about the origination of the name of your restaurant?
Yeah, Mare and Monte. Mare means sea, Monte means mountain. So the main meaning is we serve food from the seas and from the mountains. Like, it's just that simple. But I grew up in a place in a country where when you go to the north, you have that high mountains like the Swiss Alps. And when you go to the south, you have that beautiful beaches like the Greek islands.
Yes.
And we grew up having goats, having lamb, having tomatoes, having peppers, eating roasted peppers, eating all that goat cheese, eating the cream. And then we grew up eating that branzino, eating that salmon, eating that tuna, eating all those dishes that comes from the sea. So all the cuisine, like all my influence growing up, all my food, like, because don't forget, you get taste what you like.
Yeah.
And what you like to eat, is just a way of like where you live. Why Bolivian food or why Chilean food or why Colombian food is something that you like, and I'm not crazy about it because you got teased to eat that food. I got teased to eat this food. You understand what I mean?
Yeah,
like, it's just
100%.
Just like, And that's how it came from. Like when I was thinking, what's the best thing to do? What's the best name to put up there? That this is what came to. Like, like I just wanted to tell everybody that this is a mix between mountains and seas.
I love that story. I have recently listened to this podcast with Chris Do. Chris Do is someone I really looked up to in terms of brand strategy. He had mentioned something that really had me reflect. He was in this podcast explaining how in personal branding, basically trying to define who you are and putting this sort of impression and remembrance in people of yourself. It's really just a reflection of your collection of memories and who you are when you were a child, which is kind of interesting to think about. Because when I start to reflect on it, a lot of the things I believe on currently, the trajectory of my career, where I am right now, the things I believe, I recognize a very distinct time in my childhood where I started to have some kind of direction. Like I have a high affiliation with or affinity with technology when I was younger. Like I loved computers when I first had my first computer, things like that. I'm curious to know, maybe we could reflect a little bit on your personal brand here, and maybe we can dig into your own experience growing up in Albania. If you,
This is very funny you mentioned this, because while you're talking about this, like in my mind, it's coming something up. Like, I mean, in my mind, are coming up the cooking shows we used to watch with my father, and I never thought about this. Like just talking to you right now, it's coming up that we used to watch Jamie Oliver, like the Englishman that used to. This is so crazy! Wow, you just gave me such an amazing perspective of how I got influenced right now, because I didn't think about this. And we used to watch cooking shows like probably every week, like, hey, you're doing this, and we used to try those things in our house with my mom and my dad. It's very hard to get ingredients over there, so we used to mix up things to try to make it taste like it is. So this is so incredible. I love this. Wow, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, man. You're amazing, bro.
It's something to really think about. I keep thinking about it more and more day after day after I've watched that podcast, because sometimes I speak with people a certain way and I'm like, okay, why did I do it that way? And I think of maybe an interaction I had with a professor early on and kind of marked the way in something that I've said it at that time that worked. And now I think that's going to work like that the rest of my life. But I hadn't really verbalized it. I hadn't put like a bow on it and say, okay, this is who I am. To me, it really feels like when developing a personal brand, it's just trying to rediscover who you were as a kid. I think we're all, and it's just my personal opinion, but I think we're all kind of chasing our childhood dream in a certain way, but we have forces kind of pulling us in different ways. In your case was like living in Albania and then having this terrible war that you went through, and now trying to rediscover that now that you've landed in the United States, going through your doctorate or your physical therapist degree and having that experience as well. And now you're trying to finally unravel who it was that you were when you were watching Jamie Oliver, it's so cool to think about.
This is amazing. It's amazing. So many things coming to my head right now, but I love it. I love it. You just triggered something else in my head that is just incredible.
Glad to hear. Thank you, Chris, for that. I appreciate it. All right. Got one more question for you regarding the brand. Do you have any aspirations as to opening like a second or third or fourth restaurant? No. You want it to be that one, the crown jewel?
Like how much money? It's enough money.
Right.
Like, like if you can answer me that question, I would be the happiest one possible. So the idea is like, I want to be involved in there. Like I want to be in the restaurant all the time. I don't want to lose this what we have, because with the expansion we're gonna lose this. Like, at least for now, like it comes to your head, but it's nothing that you say it loud. But like, if we can make a decent living from that, and I can have fun and make friends and meet people like you, I'm more than happy. Like that's how I get rich.
I love that. That's so good. Awesome. Let me see. I had one more note in here. Okay. Do you think you have any advice for restaurant owners who may be struggling right now?
Yes. Don't overcomplicate things.
Okay.
It's more simple that you make it. You complicate it yourself. Like, make sure your employees are happy with the work environment, with everything what's going on. Feed your employers.
Okay.
Like make sure that they eat, and then people need to eat to be serving food. Otherwise, like if you don't feed them, like if they're hungry, it's not a good thing. I went through myself when I was hungry, how was my service, and when I was not hungry. So it's very, very, very important. Like I've been seeing people not feeding them. And just take it easy. Just think about the things you like, and people gonna like it too. It's just that is so simple. I think it's so simple. Probably it's not gonna work out for me, but I still gonna make it so. It's gonna be simple to me. It's gonna be your food is. Do you like your food? Ask yourself, do you like your food?
Right.
Like, do you like to eat? And if you like it, you're in a good path. If you don't like it, don't lie to yourself and take feedback from every customer that comes in.
Feedback is awesome. Yeah, feedback's great. Last question here. We'll wrap it up as we land the plane, as they say.
I love that.
I've been watching the show. Maybe you have. Have you watched The Bear by any chance?
People mentioned The Bear to me, but I haven't watched The Bear. Like I don't know anything about. But they mentioned The Bear to me, like how you rethink how good you are after you watch that, because they showcase everything that goes wrong in the restaurant or something like this.
I think, well, first I wanted to, it would have been great if you had watched it because I could ask your perspective. Yeah. The show premise, and I'm sorry for spoilers for anybody, but the premise of the show is just a struggling restaurant that used to sell hoagies, kind of like Chicago sandwiches, or I think it's called like dip sandwiches or something like that. But they did really bad. And there's this main protagonist, his name is Carmi, who is a professional chef in New York, who decides to return back to Chicago because his brother, who was running the sandwich restaurant, had passed away. And so he decides now to bring this culinary expertise that he had from New York City now to Chicago failing restaurant, and then turn it around. And we're going now through this point in the show where they're trying to pursue a Michelin star. And so you get to see really the struggle that comes across in developing a great menu, great service, a restaurant that's memorable and remarkable enough to get that sort of accolade. Which I was thinking, okay, Prince is going through these rungs right now. Yeah. And
probably it's a lot. Yeah. You're right. You're right. Yeah. That's probably why people mention that.
Yeah.
But probably it's right. Yeah. Now I have a little bit of feeling of what you're talking about. Probably I saw some segments on TikTok or Instagram or something like this, or I saw something. But yeah, it's part of that, but I just don't take it too dramatic. Like, like I don't get nervous or stressed, or, I'm only stressed in the morning when I make sure that we have every ingredient possible to make the food.
Yeah.
After that, it's in our hands. When I'm in somebody else's hands, like to have the cheese I want, to have the meat I want, to have that, like that's my stressing part. Like when I have everything in the room, like, no, it's us. No, we control this. So this is restaurant. Have you seen restaurant owners? They are stressed. They are mad. They're like, like, shouldn't be like that. At least not for me. This is what I'm trying to perceive. Like, I want to have fun owning a restaurant. I want to have fun. I want to talk to the customer. I want to make new friends. I want to make partners. I just need to be there to have fun. Like just to enjoy the ride. The ride is with the bad parts too, but it's a ride. It goes.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. This leads to my actual last question here. Right. I went out with Alex, you met Alex, to your restaurant because originally we're looking to try if any Michelin star restaurant in San Antonio. There's none. There's not a single one. And so we looked at the next best Italian restaurant, and that was yours.
Yes.
Do you have any aspirations to get a Michelin star?
MISA, the newspaper, MISA just contacted me yesterday about that. And I told them very simple thing. I'm so happy Michelin Guide is coming to Texas. I'm so happy it's coming to San Antonio. We have incredible restaurants in San Antonio, incredible food culture. And we also have a lot of restaurants that serve stars in here. But we don't have to forget one thing. We get our stars from the customers that come every day in our door. Like that are our Michelin stars. That every customer that comes in here is a Michelin star for me. So that's how I see things. San Antonio Express News, Michelin Guide, News, all this, they don't make my restaurant.
I love that.
Like people that come in the door every day, they are the stars. They are the people that give me the stars. That's where I get the stars from. Like, and it's just that simple. Like, it's amazing. It's a culinary explosion what's happening right now. Everybody's excited about that. But for me, I lived in a city where they have Michelin stars. So for me, it's just another day. Customers. Just don't forget that we have to focus on our customers. Michelin Guide is a lot of technique. It's a lot of other things that we don't really care about. We are about giving good food up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. I really appreciate that. I think it takes a lot of self-awareness to say that. It's very easy, I think, for most businesses to think that they need to compete with each other, when in reality it's just you versus you. Can you do better than X?
Yes.
I love that. Well, Prince, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
I
it.
have one more thing, and you need to put this out there. Like, I just want to thank my wife a lot. She's one of the most incredible persons I know. She's been with me the whole time. The success is part of her too. So, Albina, I love you. And yeah, that's it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Prince.
Sorry
Appreciate it.
about this.
It's okay.
She
I love this conversation with Prince. It really opened up my eyes in the reciprocity when it comes to servitude and how it can transcend different markets. Prince had such a strong story involving not only different governments and countries, obviously politics involved, but also the transaction between different services, which was always heavy-hearted, it was well-intended, it was honest, but most importantly, it was very impactful. Prince's story carried the weight of the involvement of the United States into his own country and the way that it helped his family and his future. And now we can see Prince is giving back to the community with fully intention of providing back what is that the city gave to his family. I have an immense respect for Prince for doing so, and I don't think this is something that can be done easily. That being said, how would you put this together with branding? Well, luckily, I'm happy to say that Prince has a very strong brand. And if you look at the logo for his restaurant, there's a lot of very intentional meaning in terms of logo types, shapes, fonts, as well as colors. Let's take a look at it. So as you can see here, this is a beautiful logo. The fonts are not very aggressive. They're still very much welcoming while remaining simple enough to not be overbearing on the side of the customer. It can really be stamped and placed anywhere you'd want it and it'll look amazing. That being said, there are some considerations when it comes to this logo, which I think would have knocked the ball out of the park. The first is a little bit of trouble when it comes to the spacing between the different lines in here. So the difference between Mare and Monte, you can kind of blow wind through them. You might say there's much more spacing than you would want it to be. Not a big deal. There's a choice here in fonts that I'd like to lean on a little bit heavier. I think this font, even though being a sans serif font, it is really asking a little bit more. I believe the refinement and the intent of history and tradition that comes with Italian food should always be leaning a little bit more towards a serif font. So this is something we'll play with. It was also a little bit confusing to me as to what the shape above the Mare really represented. Later we'll find out that I really did not understand it at the beginning, but it does come across as an important logo. Lastly, we'll talk about the use and importance of different fonts within a logo and how it can be very, very useful in different settings. That being said, this logo is phenomenal. I'd like to talk a little bit about the colors. The origination of the name Mare and Monte, as Prince had very clearly stated during our podcast, is to represent the sources of food and affiliation that Italian food has between the sea and the mountains. So, Within this, you can think about the grass, you can think about the shaft that you get in the farms. But more importantly, I would say in here, it comes with the blend of both. So this is a point where the logo type, the squiggly line that you see in here, really carries a lot of meaning. First off is when you think of the ocean, you think of waves. Waves do oscillate the same way that mountains or valleys would, where you see them going up and down. You can maybe picture a Windows background. But something that is also hidden in here is that the points where you see the most amount of wind, which you can also think of oscillating, is in the ocean and is at the top of a mountain. So it carries a lot of meaning in very simple shape, something that I possibly didn't quite catch at the beginning. Still, phenomenal logo. Here's where I started. As I mentioned, I believe the brand would really lean on a serif font. Reason why I started playing with some different variations, ultimately thinking that I would need a bigger E. The E was a little bit hidden in the original logo, which I thought needed to stand out just a little bit more. I was wrong about this. The reason why is because we had two very competing capital letters between both M's that play with symmetry. So when you're interrupting that symmetry with a bigger font, such as the E or the third E that you see in this case, it really doesn't convey that message very well, and it makes it more cluttered. So I end up going back to a smaller E. Something I like to point out as well. I thought that it would make sense, since we're given a very symmetrical title, in this case, Mare and Monte being relatively about the same size and both starting with M, that you'd want them line up. I think that was a mistake, and we'll see at my first take at this logo. As you can see in the first logo, I really like how this looked at the beginning. I think there is something here that I was trying to play with originally that I thought might have been a good idea. The first thing being, as I mentioned, we are playing with a logo or a name that's linear. It's very long, which could play well in certain scenarios. If you think of a business card, for instance, it would be something very stretched out. You want it to spin horizontally, it would look very nice. However, whenever you're thinking of a vertical space, it no longer really works because you have a very, very shrunk down font, and it would make it a little bit difficult to organize. So that was my first observation. The second intent I had in here was to replace the squiggly line with a crown. The reason why is I was really just inspired by the conversation I had with Prince in regards of the restaurant being the culmination of his story, the carrying of the message that he was trying to bring, and of course, something that we can't really dismiss in this case. His name is Prince. I think any prince needs his crown. That's the point when I realized I'm leaning maybe a little bit too much on the personal branding side, which isn't bad. It is not something that would diminish the brand of the restaurant. But more so than that, I think people should really get to know Prince before they make the association of the crown. I think they will have maybe some initial ideas or associations with the crown that they wouldn't really get to realize or connect until they truly get to know the owner, which is something that most customers won't get to do. So with that being said, we did away with this logo. Even though I liked how it looked, I think it was very well balanced. I thought I had some challenging elements in this case that did not ultimately result in being the optimal pick. Something that I did keep in this case is the original logo had the subtitle Italian Restaurant. I thought of some ways to maybe go away from an additional word in here, and the easiest way to do so, being the word Italian, is to speak the language and say, instead of restaurant, just do ristorante, which would be restaurant in Italian. So that would be a very well explained, maybe subtle way of implying, of course it's Italian food. We're talking to you in Italian. So I think this is something we picked for good reasons. As I had mentioned originally, this would have been a great idea. You can think about how this could turn into a pin that would go on an apron. You can think how you could slap this into a business card, possibly into an email template. There's many, many ways in which this crown could have really carried that sort of level of impact and story that came with Prince's experience. I think ultimately I would love for Prince to use this logo type for his own personal brand, but I don't think it lands very nicely for the restaurant's brand. For that reason, we did away with it. So we landed on a second iteration of the logo. As you can see here, we went from having a very horizontal, spread out title to something that's a little bit more narrow. And stacking those M's give out that left symmetry a very, very nice weight. The issue I had originally with the placement of the logo type, which originally was the squiggly line on the left side, is that it was already too heavy on that side and diminutive on the right side, making it kind of a slope. Something that maybe was intentional, I don't particularly think might have been. For that reason, I moved the crown a little bit to the right on the E side, but as I said, we'll do away with the crown. Ultimately, I think we're getting closer to what I think would be a great logo. But finally, I gave up. I did not go away with the crown. I think the message carried by the wave that you see here, the squiggly line, so to speak, was that strong. I think it really did a great job. So kudos to the original designers for the logo. It is something that really embodies the truth that comes behind the brand and the restaurant itself. Now we moved from a sans serif font to a serif font to really show that there is a lot of history with Italian food. Of course, the history itself with Prince's personal experience, the caliber of fine dining that we had to experience in there was also something that spoke of expertise. And then finally, we reduced a little bit the footprint of the subtitle by moving away from Italian restaurant to just ristorante, explaining to the users, maybe in a subtle way, that they're coming here for Italian food because it is in Italian. This is what we speak. Finally, we moved to squiggly line from the left to the right side, really to tie up the balance, in this case, of the logo's weight. Now we have a well-balanced logo. It can be expanded, shrunk down in any way. You can slap it in anything you can think of, and it'll look just great. So, with that being said, this is my favorite part. We can look at some examples. Of course, we need to start with a menu. This is a menu that was originally, I believe, for a Spanish restaurant, but I think it would, you understand what I mean here. This looks great. This is something, again, that you can put in a vertical format menu, in a horizontal format menu, big and small, and it will work just fine. I think it really, really complements, again, the high dine cuisine that you get to experience in Prince's restaurant. It does a great job. I think it carries the message very nicely. Not only do we see this in menus, of course, we'll have to see it in clothing. If Mare and Monte were to sell merch at one point, or maybe this could be for their servers, who, by the way, happen to wear a very similar white tee, it would work just nice. I think this is not a problem here. This looks great. Again, having the font, or rather the layout of the words being on top of each other rather than horizontal, allows you to expand that logo and make it a little bit bigger, enough to be legible without taking too much footprint. So I think that was a great choice. Lastly, something I wanted to point out here is that if this is a server, as you can see in this case, you're already in the restaurant, you know the intent of you going into the restaurant is, which in this case, of course, is to eat Italian food. There's no reason to include the ristorante part at the bottom of the logo, given that you already know the purpose of you being there. So we did away with that, simplified the logo just quite a bit more without losing any meaning in this case. That was the front of the kitchen. Now we look at the back of the kitchen, where we see the chefs, the cooks, who are now wearing, of course, their dedicated aprons and uniforms in this case to cook their food. No problem there. Works perfectly fine. Finally, if Prince decides to sell some merch in a darker tone, in this case for fabrics, it works just fine as well. As you can see in this case, Mare Monte in a white font works perfectly fine. It would blend in no problem with any kind of colors, and it's still very legible. Again, just wanted to highlight something here. In this case, we're talking about merchandise. When you talk about merchandise, people are not in the streets to eat Italian food necessarily. They might be walking to a grocery store. They might be seeing a family member. So for you to explain that this name really belongs to an Italian restaurant by saying it's a ristorante, of course, would be important. Reason why it was included in this particular mock-up. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the logo face, in this case, the squiggly line that you see in here. It is something I couldn't understand at the beginning, but now that I see it, it's so easy to apply to different areas of the restaurant. The first place where I thought about it would be napkins, things that are of utility to our restaurant. As you can see in this case, it is so subtle. But when you think about sea and mountains, in this case, Mare and Monte, the name of the restaurant, you're thinking of peaks. So whenever you have a napkin laid out in a way like this, you're really communicating that sort of message. At the top of a mountain, of course, not only do you have the high winds, but you also have that creme, that top of the ice or snow that you see in a typical mountain, which of course could be represented by the squiggly line the same way. It's very subtle. It's not really screaming that you are here, but it adds texture, it adds character, and it puts in context what it is that you're about to eat with the mission, the statement of the restaurant. And then finally, of course, you can apply that to more merchandise. So now that people will become a fan, they understand what it is that you do. You could just go buy the original logo face, in this case, the squiggly line, and it works just fine. This is something I'd wear. Honestly, it's very simple. I get it. But given a great type of fabric, a good amount of printing, and the experience I had at the restaurant, I'd wear this very, very proudly. With that, I had a great time with Prince. It was a phenomenal conversation. Prince was a very, very, very well-spoken person. He's very well accomplished. He's very humble at the same time. And I learned things that I think I'll carry with me forever. I also wanted to take this last bit of time of this podcast to dedicate this episode to my grandma, Nilda, who passed away yesterday. Nilda had a great story that resonated with me and the message of this podcast. She was a big servant to her church local in Bolivia, where she got to meet some people from the United States who were extradited and ended up being in jail. They were in for some terrible, terrible circumstances, but my grandma was very keen to understand that they were seeking for forgiveness. And it was her dedication, her lifelong work to make sure that these people were understood, to understand that there is a way for them to belong to a society and participate in the way that we do. My grandma did a lot of work when it came to her service to people without asking or expecting anything from anybody. I think it's the same as Prince is doing. I think it's the same as we all should strive to do. So just wanted to take a little bit of time to celebrate her life and to make her proud. So thank you so much for being here. Episode number 2 of the 5 to 9 podcast. I appreciate you. Bye-bye.